Welcome to the Thoroughbred Network. We are a regular podcast who feature a member of the equestrian world and the relationship with the Thoroughbred. In this episode, we're joined by Eventing Olympian Rebel Morrow. We talk about her inspirational story of her off-the-track purchase, who not only took her to the Olympics, but inevitably became her horse of a lifetime. We discuss the importance of the Thoroughbred blood in the sport, as well as retraining Thoroughbreds to the correct discipline. Welcome to the Thoroughbred Network. Thank you so much for joining us, Rebel Morrow.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
So I really wanted to have a good chat to you today. I've recently met you in the last year after you relocated from Queensland into New South Wales. You joined the team here at Bimbadeen with Shane and Nikki Rose. What an experience. How
Yeah,
good.
it's very cool. I've known Shane and Nikki for a long time, since we were kids. So it's awesome actually to be amongst them now as grown-ups.
That's amazing. So we know you as a professional athlete in the world of eventing, but I really wanted to get stuck in to how this came about, and how we know you as today and the journey of that. And a big part of my upbringing is Thoroughbreds. I've been in racing my whole career, and I wanted to really have a chat to you about how important that is within your sport. But let's start from the start, and let's go back to young Rebel and your upbringing in your childhood.
My childhood was definitely a good childhood, a good upbringing, because both my parents were involved in horses. Their parents raced the Thoroughbreds. Mum took on the love of it. Dad didn't. He had to when we married my mother, and then I continued on riding, so he just had to. But Mum became a professional Western pleasure rider with Appaloosas actually, and so we did that for years. And I was privileged to go to America in a couple of young rider teams, but this is how we moved into eventing to what I'm involved in now, is because Mum met Simon Cale, who was showing an Appaloosa stallion at that time, and he used to event it as well. And pretty much as soon as we felt the thrill of eventing, we did start off with the Appaloosas, but they just weren't going to do what we wanted to do in the eventing, so that's where we moved into the Thoroughbreds. So,
born and bred in Queensland?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
And it was just you and what siblings?
What's that, sorry?
Did you have any siblings?
I do have a sibling. I have a brother. Yes, he's a couple of years older than me.
Oh, amazing. Not into horses?
Not anymore. We both, because Mum was a professional, we both started out in horses, but he moved on to get married and have a family and probably a lovely paying job and all those sort of things that I don't have. He moved out of horse, which was a shame, only in the sense because he was extremely talented, just one of those naturally talented people that you go, they just don't have to work hard at things. But no, he lives up in Queensland as well with my parents.
I come from Scotland, and it's quite, we describe it as dreich, which really means...
What as?
Dreich, which means it's grey and rainy quite a lot of the time.
Yeah.
But just imagining your childhood up there in sunny Queensland, being outdoors with horses all the time. What an amazing childhood.
Oh, it was, and because we were on a little property and Dad had cows, and I had the best of everything, and even where their property backed onto this massive property that literally surrounded the town of Kilcoy where I grew up, and we'd always go out on the horses bareback, and how we survived, I don't know, thinking back on it, but I had an awesome childhood. And
it sounds like a dream come true. I came through ponies, but my parents were not particularly horsey. My mum went above and beyond and made herself horsey, but wasn't particularly horsey. But I think that's such an amazing dream for you guys to have Mum there, to be so horsey and to be able to help you and really kickstart you off and with such well-educated horses. Yeah, that's a dream.
Well, and that's what I was very fortunate in that sense. The horses that I learnt to ride on were all educated from Mum. So, you hear of other stories of people that parents don't even know how to hold a horse, and they've managed to find their way to Pony Club and deal with learning how to ride with parents that aren't. And my dad was, he's a farrier as well, and he had to take on the love of horses due to Mum, and so I did not miss out on anything growing up. So I'm very thankful.
I'm just thinking of being able to have a farrier at home. I watch my mare pull its shoes off for fun. That would
that's it.
That is so handy.
Yep.
I swear my mare does that specifically just not to go anywhere. But if I could have someone to bang that shoe on every day.
I know.
There's no excuses. That's so beautiful. That really is. So where was your first turning point to say I'm going to take eventing seriously?
I guess it was like once I finished high school. Like I went to grade 12, and I mean I was never destined to do anything university wise. That just wasn't my thing. But and riding my horses. But I guess I did that for a good couple of years, not thinking again where this was going, like whether I was building to become a professional equestrian. But I was offered the opportunity to move to New South Wales to work for Tasha Hammond and to groom for her. And that's where it sort of started to come about, once I started to live it and breathe it every day. And I was very fortunate to have already purchased Groover by that point. And to go down there on a horse that was obviously talented and had the ability to go somewhere definitely started to pave the way for me.
The start of Groover's life, I really love his story, and he was a pretty cheap buy.
He was a very cheap buy, but definitely at the time I did complain about having to spend $300 on him. But yeah, I know, and that's everyone's like, you what? Only $300, and you went to the Olympics? And yeah, but at the time, that was a lot of cans I used to have to pick up to save for those coins, But yes, it was just again the right place at the right time. My dad was shoeing with the farrier that shod the owner of Groover, and he was going out on a spell, and they wanted to retry him in the races, but I was able to bring the horse back into work for them to see whether he was going to be suitable for what I wanted to do if he didn't end up racing well for them. And this is the irony of it. At that point in my life, obviously I was only young, 17, 18, because I just finished school, and I had no idea what it was like to sit on a horse that had been to the Olympics. Never had, as in anyone else's horse. And it was the second day I rode Groover, and I gave him a little jump, and I turned around to my mum and I said, if I was to go to the Olympics, this would be the horse that I'd be riding. And I mean that just was a comment because of how naturally, easily he found it, and you could feel the enjoyment in the horse too, of what he did. But Groover actually had to go through quite an extensive operations on him because he was diagnosed with ethmoid hematomas. Right. So while I had him, he had this discharge coming out of his nostrils, and when the guys took him back to racing, I said to them, you better just get him, take him to the vet on the way back, because he's, like, the last few days he's had this stuff come out of his nose. I'm not sure what it is. He might have hit his head rolling, because he loved rolling all the time. Like, he was a pig in mud. It's the saying, isn't it? Yeah, pig in mud. That's correct. And so they did do that when they picked him up, and then they rang me and they said he's got ethmoid hematomas, and they didn't want, because it is quite extensive to treat a horse with that. So he wasn't a proven racehorse for them at that point in time, so they were looking at a different avenue. So that's where I took him on, and went about it, and went about all these operations over the years, and so
it's a sign of a tough horse, isn't it? Really, when they're coming through those sort of operations and still being a champion on the other side.
Well, and the irony of it, again, in these passing comments when I look back on it, because Groover definitely did have his head opened up 4 times, and it was after the second time, and I was quite distraught about having to go through it with the horse and whether I was doing the right thing, and this is where I said to Nick, like, should I, I have no idea how much pain the horse was going through and things like that, but he actually reassured me that, it's a week long thing of him coping with the opening his head up. He said this horse is definitely destined for something great. He says not many horses can go on the table and do what he's done and come out the other side as fresh as a daisy, which he did every time. And this is, which enabled me to still keep progressing in Groover's career. He actually, it was only literally a week's rest, and then I could work the horse again. Because, I mean, it was his head, it was his skull. So it wasn't like an injured leg where you have to have a certain amount of rest in that sense. So his operations would get planned after a 3-day event, because back in those days, obviously, that was a long format. So you would give your horse a good 3 months off after a big event like that. So he had time to recover, and so his career never missed a beat, actually, in the sense of that. So, yeah. So
lucky. And so when we look at eventing, actually started as a military sport in the Olympics, sort of progressed. I think badminton horse trials was one of the first ones to bring around and actually make it a sport out with the Olympics. And at that point, it was long format. What did that mean?
Long format. Yeah, long format meant a lot of hours in the saddle that we had to train the horses to get them fit enough to do their long format at the 3-day event. Well, it involved going out and doing a roads and tracks where we would do probably the first section. So we had A, B, C, and D phase, whereas now we just have the D phase, which is cross country. But A phase would be going on the roads and tracks where we would do up to 15 minutes trotting. And then the B phase would be the steeplechase. And that's when we would have eight brush fences over at least a 3-minute gallop to do it. And then we would go back to doing another roads and tracks, which again would be another 15 to 18 minutes. And then we go into a 10-minute box where your horse would have to recover. And this is where your fitness would come into it, how much work you've done prior to getting there. And then the vets would check them to make sure that their heart rate had gone down and they are fit and well and healthy to then go out and do the D phase, which would be a good eight minutes cross-country round of then covering about 25 fences.
Okay. And I suppose at that point, the Thoroughbred blood is probably imperative.
It was very imperative. That's right, because they needed to have the staying power, the endurance to be able to cope for that, because that actually went for a good hour, an hour and 20 minutes all up by the time we started to tack them up, warm them up, go out and do all that. Like, that was a massive day for them. And then to have to front up for the next day of doing the show jumping. So the 3-day event was a massive thing back in the day, and that's where the Thoroughbreds were the choice.
You really needed one to keep the endurance. And then we sort of seen eventing evolve again into what we now call the short format, which is much more palatable, would you say?
It is 100%. And that came in for the Athens Olympics that I went to in 2004. And I don't think there's anyone complaining about it. I'm sure at the time people will be like, that takes away the whatever of the sport and the military side of the sport and blah, blah, blah. And I do get that. And I'm glad I still grew up in the era where we learned how to do that and get a horse fit for that. But we definitely have horses lasting longer in the sport now. And that's the main thing.
We've probably seen a difference in phase D, which was the cross country, because now that we didn't have A, B, and C, they probably had to make these courses just that little bit trickier.
Well, that's right, and that's where the courses became a lot more technical, and they became longer. So when we had the long format, the cross country only ran for about 8 minutes. Whereas now in the short format, it can run up to 10 to 11 minutes, definitely. Yes, and you'll have more elements to the cross country phase.
Cross country. So, when was your first outing with Groover?
Well, I took him to, we were doing a competition in Brisbane at Mount Gravatt, and I was riding other horses there because I'd probably only had Groover a week. But he got brought along, and but not to compete him there, I was just going to ride him after the event. And so I went out and just popped over a few little cross-country fences, and then, as Mum puts it, next minute you could just see me literally just randomly jumping all these different fences with this big smile on my face. So that was my first outing, and that was, it was definitely, he was not going back to racing from that point on, that's for sure. And
so what was the process? You guys had came up and being very successful in the scene. And what was the process that you really felt, what was the time you really felt, we've got a shot at the Olympics here?
When I felt there was the turning of him, me and him going, you know, I guess it was, again, I even when I had him, I never just sort of started to put it all in play of going, I need to do this event to get here, this event to get here. I just enjoyed riding him. I enjoyed everything about what I was doing, working for Tasha and things like that. But I think it was then starting to hear what other people thought of us as a combination. And yeah, then it became more of a realization that I do have what it takes. It's not just the horse, you know. And so one thing led to another. You win one competition, then all of a sudden you get exposed to going on a squad. And then you get exposed to being taught by other great Olympians that have come over to train the squad. And, you know, you start getting quite excited about all that and you want to be a part of it. And, but it would have been when, I honestly can't remember what competition it was that then put me on the elite squad, which was then, would have just started to pave the way for me getting selected to go to the Athens Olympics in 2004.
And so how do you get selected? Did they just call you up and say, hey, guess what?
Well, at the end of the day, it was they called me into a room and sat me down.
Oh, there you go.
But no, it was when I won the Sydney short. They did run it as a short format. The Sydney event in 2004, and yes, I won that on group, and I came 5th on another horse that I was riding at the time. Shane was in the lineup, and Stuart Tinney was in the lineup. Those guys were both at that same competition, but winning the event was definitely sealing the deal for me to go. And I was the youngest member on that team that year, and being the first time out, and not for me not to have left Australia to get selected was a big deal at that time.
Yep.
Because it was a known thing or a done thing that these guys would, and it was a big deal, you know, financially, to put yourself out there, to go overseas, to take your horse and campaign over there. So it was a big thing for the selectors to pick me as an Australian-based rider to go over and do that. And I mean, it paid off because they do that more often now.
Yep.
Because I end up being the highest placed Aussie at the Olympics Games. So it can be done. You got the right horse and you have the passion and the talent and the ability. Yeah, you don't have to go overseas to do it. You can do it from home. And that's where Shane, this is his home, Australia is his home, and he will always do it from here. So, yeah, and that's good.
And was he a bit of a champion to travel, Groover? Did he enjoy the travel?
Luckily, yeah. Yeah, he was. But funnily enough, when we got him to England, he slept for like about a week. And they were concerned that he was unwell because he'd just spend the whole time laying down. But that was his thing of recovering. But when I first got him and started taking him to the shows, he would lay down in the truck. You know, he'd be still tied up and he'd be laid down, and I'd get this announcement, "Oh, Rebel Morrow, can go back to your truck, your horses." I'd get back there and he'd be like, "Oh, no, that's right, he's just recovering, he's tired."
He's having a nap.
So he was a really laid back
cool dude.
But as laid back as he was, when you would enter an arena, you would instantly feel the horse just puff out his chest. He loved it. Like, he didn't love racing, that wasn't his thing, but you put him in a dressage arena or a straight up arena, he loved it, you know. So.
And so we've seen that transition. So you spent most of your time campaigning him from Queensland?
No, it started off in Queensland, but that's when I moved down to work for Tasha. So then I got on the elite squad down in New South Wales, right. And then I ended up basing down in New South Wales. So I would say most of definitely 3/4 of the career was done here in New South Wales.
What was Mum and Dad's reaction at the Olympics? Did they go?
Yeah, they went. 100%. 100% they went. And Dad, actually, he put the shoes on. He shod Groover.
Oh,
which was a massive thing. And I had no idea the pressure I put him under. You know, like
100%.
he's my dad. He's always shot my horse. Sure. I did not even think. I think of it now, and now I'm aware of it and was told, like how stressful he was. And I can remember when he was shoeing him, he was sweating terribly. Again, but the stress I put him under, could you imagine that? You know, my horse didn't trot up south. That's right, my dad shot it. You know, poor bugger. But yeah, they came and they were amazing. And I'm out on cross country, you know, galloping along, going through the crowd as it was all bunted off. I was seeing there's crowds everywhere. And I've come around this one corner. I have no idea which jump I was heading towards. And then at the end of on the corner, I see this man with his flag and this hat on it, 100% Rebel. And I went, it's past my dad. So, you know, that and I heard him go. So that was a big deal. I'm like, oh my God, concentrate. But it was nice.
A beautiful memory.
Yeah. And then after the Olympics, I went holidaying with those guys for a week over on the Greek Isles. Like, how could you not? You know, it was awesome.
Did you stay in New South Wales, or did you go back to your hometown?
I went back to Queensland to start my business back in my home state. Did that for, probably was about 10 years old, you know. But then my parents bought a property down in New South Wales. So, because, you know, I always loved New South Wales. Like I didn't move home because I disliked being down here in this state. So yeah, then eventually moved back down to New South Wales again and moved into that property. But you know, life as it is and how things all evolve, and don't know how it all came about. But then been over in the Tryon actually last year, talking to Nikki, and we were just speaking about Shane's business down here and all this sort of stuff, and how he could utilise someone like me, and we just generally were chatting about it like that. And they rang me up at Christmas time, not just gone, the time before, and said, what are you up to? Do you want to come on down? And I went, you know what? I think at this point in my life and where I'm at, and, you know, I was sort of a little, I wouldn't say over it, but it was a thing of, you know, I had my truck and I had this and that, and just sometimes things get you paying for this and that, and just trying to run a business and trying to run a life and trying to run all those sort of things. So I was looking for a bit of a change. It just sort of came about at the right time. And definitely it's been the best decision I've made to date for a long time. So
what would be your position with Nikki and Shane? What is it that you would do here at Bimbadeen?
I ride all Shane's young performance horses. So the horses that he's bred, like they like to breed at least 5 a year. And then I also ride, he gets quite a lot of horses thoroughbreds come back to him that he's either broken in, pre-trained or whatever, and with some of his owners that he has, they've been sent back to him, and then I turn those guys into hopefully high-level eventers, or I find homes for them that are going to suit other people to do low-level eventing on. So my main job is just literally looking after the eventing horses.
Groover was the love of your life. I know it, and you'll very possibly never find anyone that'll ever. No, you know, whatever horse you come across, he was still your main man that took you there.
Absolutely.
But you do have another man on the scene.
I do have another man on the scene as of this time last year, and yes, a good friend of mine who lives down here with her husband now, she had him at one of Shane's jump clubs there at Camden, and he was a cheeky little horse going around, and Kirsty Douglas, she's like a brilliant little jockey, you know, and she said to me, oh, you know, I'm thinking of selling him, he'd probably suit you. I said, which part? Just because he's a cheeky little bugger. I said, I'm past that timing in my life, you know, Jesus, I'm really, whatever age I am. I said, no, I need something settled and easy. Nothing cheeky like him. She says, no, you need to come and try him. And yeah, and I did. And then I brought him here for a couple of days, and Ringer hopped on him, and he liked him instantly. You know, he definitely said, this horse will suit your personality. And I think our personalities did clash for a while when I first got him. But now he is, and this is it, sitting on that. Well, this is the third horse that I've sat on that I've gone, this horse can take you to where you want to go. that have been of mine, and the other horse in between Groover and Max was actually a full sister to Groover.
Right.
Hillgrove Enviable. So she was very, an awesome horse. So she had the ability, and definitely Maximus Prime does as well. So I'm super excited about that.
So one thing that intrigues me in eventing is ownership. In racing, we have sole ownership, we have partners, but syndicates is a really big thing in racing. And I see it's so slowly creeping into eventing. Would you own Maximus yourself?
I own Max outright now. Yes, I do. But the time I spent in America there a couple of years ago, all the top riders over there, and in England mostly too, like Chris Burton and then Boyd Martin over in America, they have all their top level horses syndicate.
Yep.
In a syndicate. It makes it so much more affordable for people, and it makes it easier for us guys to run those horses at the top level, because the cheapest part about getting the horse is the initial purchasing it. From then on, and especially if they're going to go up and up in the grades, and I don't know how that goes in racing, but from then on, everything gets more expensive.
Yep.
As you go up in the grades, to travel here, to travel there, to do this and do that with them. So I know for a fact, 100% of a fact, because I've been to Olympics once before, and I know what sort of horse it takes. I can put 100% behind Maximus Prime, knowing that he's going to be that horse. So this is something that I want to do for my first time having this together, because I've all of my time with clients and friends and things like that, there's a lot of people that do want to help back me. And now that I feel that I've definitely found that horse that can take me all the way again, this is where I will, I would love those people to come on board that have always offered it in the past, but I've just never been, and that's it. It's timing in life. I've never been in the right position, never had the right horse. But I have all that now.
Yep.
And being down here with Shane and Nikki, back in New South Wales, back where, I mean, it just even being here for the year, who I've been exposed to, being here. So, yes, I'm very excited about and putting Max up for my first syndicate.
That's amazing. So, I mean, and to have a proper horse underneath you.
Proper horse. It's good to say that. That's it. I've got a proper horse. You're right. He's a proper horse.
This is what dreams are made of, isn't
Absolutely.
it? Horses like Max.
Yeah. He's a proper little pain in the ass too some days, but that's all part of it. You have to take that quirky, arrogant personality. It's all part of it.
What a great opportunity for someone who's really passionate about about eventing, and to have a top level rider have one and declare one that you've got him. So
absolutely, and it is an amazing journey for everybody involved.
Yeah.
And it is. I mean, obviously, at the end of the day, like in racing, there's more of a financial gain to the winning.
Yep.
But definitely not in our sport. That's not part of it.
Yep.
It's just literally what you accomplish getting there, what you do as a partnership with a horse, and then how much enjoyment's out of all that for everybody. And the ribbons. I love the ribbons. Oddly enough, I love the ribbons. I love the colours and all the bits and pieces. Even if it's a bag of feed, there's just something in that for me in prize giving. Oh God, yeah.
And talking about that big part of this industry of helping you top level riders get from A to B is having that support network, and a big part of your support network is sponsors.
Yes,
isn't it? Who have you had sponsors that have aligned with you, that have supported you?
Rose Hip Vital, they're awesome because they look after me as well.
Yep.
They look after my aging body as well. So that's awesome that they can do both. And even my dog, they're fantastic for my beautiful dog back home that mum and dad look after, Honey Dog. So yes, it's keeping us all still as young and well as we can possibly be.
That's amazing.
Yeah, backing, sponsorship, parents, friends, all of that all helps to make this
the inner
industry
circle.
Awesome.
So we're now firmly sort of down here. You've got Max down here at Bimbadeen. So what sort of services are you providing? You're still coaching. You've always coached, haven't you?
I love coaching, and that was Tasha got me into coaching years ago.
Yep.
And because she said to me, it's only going to better your riding. At the time, I really didn't understand that, but it does. What you learn from sitting on other people's horses, what you learn from watching other people ride to then advising them how to do it. It does, you know, and I've never regretted it, and I really enjoy it. Like a lot of people don't enjoy coaching, so they'll just stick to the riding, but I actually really enjoy the interaction too of getting to know new people like yourself. I enjoy all that aspect of it as well, and there is something so beneficial to getting whoever to whatever level they want to, you know, and this is a thing. Some people feel intimidated to have a lesson of someone that's been in the Olympics, but it's not about that. I'm there to get you to achieve whatever you want to achieve. You know, not everyone needs to go to the Olympics. Not everyone needs to go to this level, that level. But if you just want to be safe and enjoy what you do and go out and, you know, that's all I'm here for as well, you know. So, yeah, teaching is a massive part for me as well.
That's tremendous. Rebel, I think your journey has been superb. I've thoroughly enjoyed listening to you and talking to you, and I sort of felt, especially when you're telling me about your dad, I felt like I was right there at Athens with you, watching him shoe that horse, thinking, dear Lord.
Poor bugger.
And it's so much of your career has been involved around the Thoroughbred, and I think that's so important for people to see that they don't just run around in a circle on the racetrack. There's so much more than that. And a bit like Groover, they can go to places that you never even imagined they can go. You know, there's a lot of people that would have probably came across Groover on the racetrack as just a horse.
Yes, yeah.
But he became so much more than that to you, and he took you both somewhere that was beyond your wildest dreams, even, would you like
100%,
to say?
Yeah.
And I think that's such an amazing story, and I really hope that people see that from the Thoroughbred point of view, that they're not all champions. They're actually just not all champions, but you can turn them into something, and they're so rewarding. And Thoroughbreds give back in ways that is just, it's mesmerising, isn't it? It really is.
Oh, 100%. And that's what's good when the racehorses have retired from racing, that they come to professionals like Shane and I, because then we can help find them their forever home, you know, and that's it. Not every horse on the track is going to go to the Olympics or be a top-level performance horse. They could just be a top-level pleasure horse with someone in the backyard if that's what they're meant to do.
Yeah.
But having guys like us find that, you know, for them, because just finding what they are initially going to enjoy for the rest of their time. And I find that extremely rewarding to be able to match those horses up with those people.
Amazing. Yeah. So looking forward, Rebel, how do our listeners keep in touch with you, be able to follow you and follow Max? How is your best way? Are you on social media?
I'm on social media, on Instagram. So Rebel Morrow, just REBEL, and Morrow, MORROW, not the comedian. But yeah, and then funny story. I put my car in to get service the other day, and they give me my keys back with Rebel Wilson written on it. That's the comedian. Yeah, everywhere. That's right. They did when they handed me the keys. They did laugh a little bit. I'm like, that's odd. But yeah, no. So just Rebel Morrow, and you'll definitely find me on social media.
And also for any prospective people that would really love an opportunity to get involved in a top syndicate with an up-and-coming horse, with the top rider, would you welcome them?
Absolutely. Absolutely, I would welcome them, yeah. So
they can contact you at any time to get involved in the dream, and that's amazing. I think for any of you listening out there who've ever thought about wanting to get involved, this is an opportunity that I wouldn't be missing. I'm involved in a couple of racehorses myself, and I'm trying to teach my husband to get us into eventing. But this looks like an amazing opportunity, Rebel, and I wish you all the best of luck with you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll speak soon.
Will do. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Thoroughbred Network. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and keep up to date with all our future guests on our website, thethoroughbrednetwork.com.au.